4:50 a.m., December 3rd, Russian S-400 operators watch their screens light up with 40 incoming cruise missiles. They open fire, they destroy every target, they celebrate victory. Then the bridge explodes. Because those weren't missiles, they were $20 toys. And while Russia was shooting at ghosts, a lone F-16 just did the impossible. It flew through the heart of Putin's air defenses, hit an ammunition convoy on the Crimean bridge, and flew home for breakfast. This is the story of Operation Blindfolded Bear, the most insane engineering puzzle Ukraine has ever solved, and it started with a terrifying 70% chance of failure. The Crimean Bridge, Putin's $4 billion pride and joy. For the second time in 6 months, it's burning. But this time, the twisted steel tells a different story. These aren't the scorch marks of a truck bomb or sea drone. These are precision holes from American glide bombs, and the implications are catastrophic for Moscow. Here's what Russia can't admit. Ukraine just proved that the most expensive air defense system in the world can be defeated with garage-built decoys and basic physics. The S-400 Triumph, the system that was supposed to make Crimea impenetrable, just watched helplessly as a single jet waltzed through its coverage zone, dropped its payload on an ammunition convoy, and disappeared. But before we get to the fireworks, we need to understand the players in this deadly chess game. Because this wasn't luck. This was calculated risk meeting desperate innovation. Meet Ghost. That's not his real name. 3 months ago, his squadron lost 2 pilots over Kherson. Their deaths weren't random, they flew predictable patterns, and the S-400 learned. Ghost promised himself he wouldn't make the same mistake. Tonight, he's flying an F-16 Block 50, loaded with 4 GBU-39 glide bombs. Each one is a 250-pound surgical instrument capable of hitting a parking spot from 46 miles away. But tonight's target isn't a parking spot. He needs to hit a specific expansion joint on bridge pylon 145, the same joint damaged in the last attack, creating a structural weak point. But here's the twist. Ghost isn't just hitting concrete. Intelligence reports a massive ammunition convoy will cross that exact point at 04:50 a.m. 500 tons of 152mm artillery shells. If he can time it right, the bridge won't just be damaged, it will cease to exist. Now, meet the villain, the Russian S-400 Triumph. This beast can track 300 targets simultaneously and create a 250-mile no-fly zone. Its missiles fly at Mach 6. On paper, Ghost's mission is suicide. The S-400 sees everything, kills everything, and never misses. So how do you beat a system that never blinks? You don't fight it, you give it a nervous breakdown. Ukraine's plan is beautifully insane. They're sending 10 Magura V-5 sea drones, the same type that sank the Russian corvette Ivanovets, but not as suicide boats. Tonight, they're drone carriers. Each Magura carries 4 modified FPV quadcopters fitted with custom radar spoofing pods. That's 40 flying transmitters designed to mimic cruise missile signatures on Russian radar. The goal? Create a digital ghost fleet, overwhelm the S-400's processor with false targets, force the Panzer anti-aircraft systems to waste ammunition on plastic toys, and in that chaos, in a tiny 30-second window of confusion, Ghost will pop up, release his bombs, and dive back to safety. The math is brutal. If the wind changes, the plan fails. If Russian radar is half a second faster than predicted, Ghost is dead. Intelligence estimates a 70% chance of mission failure. But the alternative is watching Russia reinforce Crimea for another year. The clock is ticking, it's time to wake up the bear. 4:45 a.m. The Black Sea is pitch black. Inside Ghost's cockpit, the threat warning receiver glows with lethal yellow bands. He's flying at 200 feet, hugging the wave tops at 550 knots. Every sensor in Crimea is looking for him. He's flying a $60 million jet into a microwave oven. 3 miles ahead, the ocean explodes with activity. 10 Magura sea drones stop dead in the water. Their hatches slide open. 40 FPV drones scream into the sky, climbing to 5,000 feet. Half the Maguras immediately turn around, racing back to safety. They're too valuable to waste. But 5 boats push forward. They're the bait. They activate corner reflectors, making their 18-foot hulls look like 60-foot landing craft on radar. Above them, the FPV swarm switches on their spoofing pods. To the Russian S-400 radar, the screen suddenly shows 40 low-flying cruise missiles. Inbound from multiple vectors, it's a DDoS attack applied to physics. At Kerch, the S-400 operator freezes. His screen is a blizzard of high-priority threats. Storm shadows, Neptune missiles, decoys. The AI tries to classify. It can't decide. The commander screams into his radio, "Free fire! Engage everything!" Two Pantsir batteries positioned near the bridge unleash hell. Twin 30mm autocannons roar to life, dumping 5,000 rounds per minute into the sky. Tracers tear through darkness like neon whips. The first FPV drone vaporizes, then a second, then a third. Ghost watches from below. The Russian gunners are doing exactly what Ukraine predicted. They're looking up. 15 drones down, 20 drones down. The Pantsers are reloading. Their barrels glow cherry red. The air reeks of cordite. Russian operators are celebrating. Their screens are clearing. The sky is safe. That's the signal. The 5 remaining Magura drones throttle to maximum, charging the bridge at 45 knots. Their emitters scream electronic noise. The Panzer crews panic, swiveling their guns down to the water. Geysers erupt around the boats. One Magura explodes in a fireball. A second is shredded by a patrol boat. But this chaos is exactly what Ghost needed. While every Russian sensor looks down, Ghost yanks the stick back. The F-16 rockets from 200 feet to 2,000 feet in 3 seconds. He just stood up in the middle of a gunfight. He's exposed. But he needs altitude for the bombs to glide. Through his targeting pod, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. Rolling onto the bridge from the Taman side is the ammunition convoy. 20 heavy Kamaz trucks, their suspensions sagging under extreme weight. The Russian commander, believing the air raid is over, just ordered them to proceed. Ghost watches the lead truck approach pylon 145. Not yet. He needs the heavy center of the convoy, the trucks with 500 tons of artillery shells, to be directly over the structural weak point. Every second he waits at 2,000 feet is another second for the S-400 to find him. Down on the water, Magura number 4 and 5 execute their final mission. They split up, forcing the Russian corvette Sergei Kotov to choose. The ship's rotary cannon shreds number 4 just 50 meters from the hull, but number 5 slips past, circling the main bridge pylon with its radar emitter at maximum power. The Russian screens show a fleet of bombers. The chaos is absolute. Ghost checks the convoy. The lead truck crosses the expansion joint, then the second, then the third. The heavy center is now over pylon 145. The trap is full. He presses the button. 2 GBU-39 bombs detach. Their diamond wings snap open. They glide silently toward the target. Then his luck runs out. The S-400 operator manually resets his radar filter. The clutter vanishes. And there, hanging in the sky like a target dummy, is the F-16. The commander's voice cracks over the radio. "Missile launch!" A Mach 6 telephone pole screams toward Ghost. He slams the throttle to full afterburner and rolls inverted, diving back toward the sea. 9 Gs. His vision grays. The G-suit crushes his legs. He dumps flares and chaff. The missile ignores the decoys. It's tracking. Ghost is diving at 600 knots. The missile is closing at 4,000 knots. The math says he's dead. He has one chance. He turns perpendicular to the radar beam. If he can match his speed to the drifting smoke clouds below, the Doppler radar might lose him. For one terrifying second, the missile wavers. Then it reacquires. Ghost braces for impact. Boom! The missile detonates, but not on him. At the last second, it switched targets, prioritizing the incoming GBU-39 over the retreating jet. One bomb vaporizes, but the second bomb doesn't care. It glides through the smoke, corrects for the crosswind, and punches through the canvas cover of the center truck. The call. That evening, Orban dials Brussels. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen answers immediately. She's been expecting this. "Victor." Her voice is cold, professional. "I assume you're calling about gas." Orban closes his eyes. This is the conversation he swore he'd never have. Hungary needs emergency access to EU reserves. Of course, a pause. And in return, what do you want? His voice is barely controlled. Support for the next Ukraine aid package, full alignment on Russian sanctions, no more vetoes, no more obstruction. she lets that hang. Or you explain to your people why they're freezing while the rest of Europe stays warm. Orban's jaw clenches. He sees his political career evaporating, his legacy crumbling. But he sees something else too. Riots in Budapest, factories closed, his government toppled. Agreed, he says through gritted teeth. Von der Leyen's response is immediate. Welcome back to Europe, Victor. In his headset, Ukrainian air traffic control breaks protocol. Ghost, confirm status. Alive, bridge is down, heading home. There's a pause. Then, welcome back, Ghost. Your squadron is waiting. For the first time in 3 hours, Ghost allows himself to breathe. When the smoke clears, the damage is catastrophic. The rail line is destroyed. The road span is impassable. But the real impact isn't measured in tons of concrete. Let's talk about the economics. Ukraine spent approximately $1.3 million. Cheap drones, remote-controlled boats, and 2 glide bombs. Russia faces hundreds of millions in repairs, the loss of 500 tons of critical ammunition, and the total paralysis of southern logistics for months. But money isn't the real story here. Before this strike, Russia moved 6,000 tons of military cargo across this bridge daily. Ammunition, fuel, reinforcements. Everything feeding the southern front flowed through this single choke point. Now, Russia has 2 options: ship supplies by ferry across the Kerch Strait, a slow, vulnerable process, or truck them through occupied Mariupol, adding 300 kilometers and 2 days to every delivery. For Ukraine's southern offensive, this changes everything. Russian artillery battalions in Zaporizhia were firing 800 shells per day. Without steady resupply, that drops to 200. Russian tank brigades in Kherson were rotating units every 3 weeks. Now they'll have to stretch rotations to 6 weeks. Exhausted troops, rationed ammunition, crumbling logistics. But here's what keeps Russian commanders awake at night. This wasn't a massive operation. This was 1 jet, some boats, and 40 plastic drones. If Ukraine can do this to the Crimean bridge, what else can they hit? The Kerch Strait ferry terminal? The ammunition depot at Jankoy? The airbase at Belbek? The S-400, Russia's pride and supposed shield over Crimea, just proved it can be fooled by $20 toys and clever tactics. Every Russian installation in Crimea is now vulnerable, and Moscow knows it. Meanwhile, in Washington and Brussels, analysts are taking notes. This operation proved something NATO has suspected for years. Modern air defense systems can be overwhelmed not with more expensive weapons, but with smarter tactics and asymmetric warfare. Ukraine just wrote the playbook for how smaller nations can fight back against superior technology. The Crimean bridge will be repaired, it always is. But the psychological damage can't be fixed with concrete and steel. Russia's aura of invincibility over Crimea is shattered, and that's a wound that won't heal. So here's my question for you. Do you think this strike marks the beginning of the end for Russia's control over Crimea? Or will they adapt their defenses and prevent future attacks? And more importantly, if Ukraine can pull this off with limited resources, what happens when they get more F-16s and long-range weapons? Drop your analysis in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you think this operation was insane, wait until you see what I've uncovered about Russia's next move to protect the bridge. That video drops in 2 days. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Until then, stay sharp.